roll call. So when I call your name, just say that you're here. Chuck Allen. Here. Dan Belmont.
Here.
Charles Brogdon.
Here.
Kate Daniels.
Here.
Joe Daltrey. Edward Davis.
Here.
Mary Ann Dudley.
Here.
Judith Gray.
Here.
Elba Gutierrez. Dustin Pike, I'm here. Barat. Tim.
Here.
And Craig. All right, I'm going to open it up for the public comment period. Any public comments?
Well, welcome back, everyone. It's good to see everyone in person.
All right, well, we'll get started on old business. Approval of February GTC WCTDA minutes. They were in the packet for everyone's review. Need a motion and a second.
So moved.
All right. So we'll have Kate make the motion. Second.
Second.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Perfect. All right. We'll jump into the financials. It's going to be on page 4 in your packet. All right, so this is the combined expense budget for the Wayne County Goldsboro Travel and Tourism. So obviously, you know, COVID has changed some things. So we're over a little bit on advertising. However, we're under on a lot of other things such as travel, office supplies and stuff like that from the staff not being in the office. And then some conferences getting canceled that they were planning on going to.
Can I have a question about this expense budget also?
Yeah.
I know we was all on that email, that how come the city can use $110,000 for the complex, for the light bill, and give tourism only $40,000, and that was not brought to the board? I think that, you know, me as managing 2 hotels in Goldsboro, and my Hampton Inn gives the most of the money, you know, the top one. I want to know, we should have used $100,000, you know, for marketing, because my company is hurting, the tourism in Goldsboro is hurting, and if we do not have the marketing dollars to bring people to Goldsboro, you know, then how can we, you know, sustain anything? And I just want to know, how can we use $110,000 for a light bill at the complex and give tourism board $40,000? You know, we should have used $40,000 and gave us $100,000. That just one thing, because I don't know how y'all budget and stuff work. This is my first time really dealing with city government, but you know, that just not seem right to me, you know, as a person.
Let me give you the short answer, and then we'll give it a little longer answer. First off, the law that created this whole board gives the city council the authority to spend the money any way we deem to spend it within the law. Okay, so it's up to us in the end of the day how the money gets spent. This is an advisory board, so to speak, and you should. Now, the other thing is, and the reason Ashland sent what she did is on the $40,000, it kind of wasn't what I meant, but at least it started the conversation. I also believe that this board should look at the whole budget before it's sent to the city council or before it's sent to the county. And I don't think that's happened before. I talked about it last year. I think because you weren't meeting this year, it probably didn't happen this year either. But I do agree with you that the board ought to know what's in the budget, and they ought to, you know, endorse it as best they can. At the end of the day, if the city or the county want to do something different, it is what it is. But at least the board would know, they would understand, and they would have some say-so. So I do hope going forward that there is more dialogue at budget time with the board, between Ashland and the board. Did that make any sense?
Yeah. I mean, you know, that made great sense, you know, because I do budgets all the time. And, you know, I deal with numbers as well. It just, you know, it would just seem, you know, because we want people to come to Goldsboro. You know, I love Goldsboro. Nice city, I really do. And that's why when we do our business after hours, we try to, I spend thousands of dollars in my business after hours. You know, I go to some other hotels and stuff, and they just put a platter out, but we really do it up because we want to showcase, the city to other people and showcase my hotels. But, I just want to know, why. That is, it just, okay.
I have a question about 110,000, right, that you are spending. I feel like it's just to buying the lighting work or using it,
I didn't understand you.
like it's buying that lighting project?
Yeah, what we did is we bought the lights at the soccer field and financed them over however many years, okay? And this is the payment. I mean, and it's, the travel and tourism, fund has like 500,000 in it at the time, right? And so they elected to take 100-something thousand out of it, with our blessing, because if they didn't get it from there, they're gonna have to go somewhere else and get it. And our fund is, our balances are so tight this year that they really didn't have anywhere else to get it. So we let them go.
I feel like it's okay to get that way because you are building infrastructure. And marketing will be done every year. It's not just one time. This is just one-time expense.
What kind of lighting, if I may ask you?
It's the lighting at the sports fields.
Is this a bill, or is it just the lighting that update the lighting?
It's buying the lighting.
Excuse me?
We're paying for the lighting that we put in.
Loan agreement.
Okay.
And so I think that over the course of 60 months of some, odd time, every year we owe a payment on the illuminated fields out there.
The county was gonna give us the money, and then they backed up and didn't give it to us. So we had to go do something else real quick. So that's kind of what happened with that.
Well,
Well,
no, but I know you are, but I will say about the lighting, this is a common practice that this is occurring, that's happened in other TDAs, because the thought process is, the more lighting you get on the fields, the more exciting and more people will look at you because you have capabilities for night games that will allow you to do more tournaments. So therefore, the more tournaments you do, the more tourism you'll get, the more heads in bed you'll get. So it is an allowable expense, and I think it is something that is supportive, or should be supported by the TDA, because whatever we can do, and the funds for TDA are supposed to encourage heads in beds. And I think by lighting the fields at the Bryan Center will encourage more people to come, more tourism to come, and put those heads in beds.
Okay. Then could we have not gave the tourism board today a little more money than $40,000?
Let me clarify if we can. So there's two different organizations here, of which many of you are a member of both. TDA,
Yeah, I
county,
understand that.
GTC,
It's
city.
so far, yeah.
TDA gets its money from the county, and you all decide what gets done with it. You have authority to move that money. GTC is an advisory board to the city council, and the city council determines what we're going to do with that money.
Oh, I understand that.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
So-
Go ahead.
if I can interject, I think because it's advisory in nature, I think maybe there was no advising prior to the money being used, and I understand your take on we should have more information. I didn't even get my final numbers until the week before city council went to vote. So practicality of presenting, knowing what sort of media we want to spend, that is so rushed, and I'm also dependent on my vendors getting pricing back to us. But I don't know if it's like like the project of paying for lights, I'm fine with. But I think the principle of it is allowing the boards to function the way they're supposed to function, with presenting the project idea, how the money is going to be working for the board, how it's going to be working for tourism. So it's more about how it went about than what it's for. That's not really the bigger issue. I think it just was,
Well,
if we were going to be dipping into those funds, it would have been like, all right, well, we're good with dipping into the savings account. Well, then now is the time to invest in the visitor economy as well. Because the way, as we all know, it's very complicated the way our occupancy taxes are divvied up. But in a roundabout way, about a third comes to tourism marketing, a third goes to the Bryan Multi-Sports Complex and the Event Center, and a third goes to the Maxwell Center. So there's already a third of collections reserved for debt service for the sports complex. So then to take another chunk out of the marketing fund, that should have come through the board.
Okay,
Just to see.
that's not a chunk out of the marketing fund. It is a reserve. There could be a bunch of different ways that money's put there. If you look at the 20 October 2015 amendment to the intergovernmental agreement between the city of Goldsboro and Wayne County, it says for the first 20 years, 40% of our city's 5% is supposed to go for the convention center. 40% is supposed to go to the city for expenses in construction, operate, maintain tourism-related facilities such as the Bryan Multi-Sport Complex. And 20% is supposed to go to the GTC for marketing-related activities. So
Right, but I think it
how
just
that
goes back-
reserve is divided up,
It just goes back to the premise of the board felt irrelevant
I get that.
in that action.
Unfortunately, we had COVID and we couldn't meet, we couldn't discuss a lot of these things, so.
Yeah, but Ashland, y'all hadn't ever hadn't ever discussed the budget on the board since I've been here.
We usually do in the
Unless I'm-
June, when we have all of our ducks in a row, we know exactly what the plan would be to propose, but we haven't never done it in depth. Even when I was a board member prior to becoming a director, no, the board was never in a financial, there was no financial like, hey, this is what we're gonna do, you guys like it?
I get it, but to me, the board has a duty to know what's going on, right?
Correct.
Part of that is financially. I mean, you ought to know, we ought to know. huh?
That's a double-edged sword then. If you're
Well-
gonna say we have to have say in the budget, then we should have had a say in the $110,000.
Okay, at the end of the day, you don't have any say in
There you
the
go.
city's budget, other than, hey, this is what we would do with the money. And normally, we're gonna listen to you. I mean, we don't have any reason to be going against you. Like the money to pay for the lights, I didn't like that. That was against what I would wanted to do. But when we got down to it, Tim's like, okay, you take the 110, but where are you gonna give it back to me at?
Right.
And so we're in a bind too.
And I get,
Yeah.
trust me, I
So-
get that. I think the bigger rub was the $110,000 was, well, this is how it's gonna get spent, and, it's the end of the day, and COVID. And then the $40,000 became a big deal of, well, if you wanna spend it, we need to go through this process, you need to advise the board and all that kind of stuff. So it was,
Well,
it was
that,
two
and
different
that's where I think it got confusing, because what I was saying is the board should look at your whole budget,
Yep.
not just the 40,000.
And that was something we discussed last year, and I think
And that's what
COVID
I'm
just
saying, because
kinda-
we did discuss that last year.
COVID kind of threw it in a loop, because I know the city was, budget cycle ran a little bit
So
longer to
going
figure this
forward,
stuff out.
we have nothing to do with the county
Yep.
money. I mean, that's
GTC
y'all,
wise, yep.
that board, right? The city money, what I would love to see happen is for y'all to say, okay, here's our budget, this is how we'd like to spend it. And let us just say, okay, that looks good, and we'll put it in that way. And to me, if we can do all that, then we'll get along a lot better. Does that make sense?
All right, any other questions on the expense budget sheet? All right. Next page, collection report. Well,
Is it 8:45? I guess, yeah, we can go into public hearing.
yeah. So we're gonna jump back to the public hearing for the WCTDA budget, since we said it was gonna be at 8:45.
You want me to do a brief overview, because there was one change?
Yes.
So, I'm not sure what page your budget's on. You have page 6? Okay, thank you.
Wait, we're doing public hearing, correct?
Yes, but since we're doing public hearing for comments, I would like to give an update on what the change is, just so I can be completely transparent on what's been done there.
So on page 10 is what you provided for the proposed budget for next fiscal year, and
Okay.
page 6 is current fiscal year.
Okay, so probably page 10. Yeah, okay. So on page 10 is the original, in the first column, the original recommended budget that I think was emailed out to you all probably around the end of May, I think it was. There have not been many changes, except for if you look in the proposed changes column, you will see a $2,850 adjustment being decreased out of the salaries for contracted services line item and added to advertising. That is just because once I got with Catherine about the city's budget, she gave me the numbers that I think you all had decided on, and so I needed to true up to that, because we pay up to half of the salaries for the tourism for the city. So I had to true up to their numbers so that Catherine and I would be on the same page. And what I typically do is once I know all my expenditures for tourism, I plug the difference to advertising because that's where we want most of the dollars to go. So you'll see that I decreased the $2,850 from contracted services and I added it to the advertising line item. That's the only change I made aside from the original budget that was sent to you all around the end of May. And if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. I did use, Catherine and I did get together on our estimates for occupancy tax. I mean, I imagine I'm like her, it was really just, I mean, it's kind of an educated guess, not so educated, but just hoping we get lucky. So, anyway, if anyone has any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we're good to go with the public hearing.
I don't know if we want to talk about how we would go about voting prior to the public hearing because of all the...
Yeah, so I believe the rules state we have to have a 24-hour period. So the proposed solution that was emailed around was that the board, the TDA board, would vote to approve the budget pending any sort of public comments or objections after a 24-hour period versus us having to get back together and vote again before the end of the month. So if everyone's okay with that plan, then I need a motion and then a second and an approval from TDA members only, which,
I'll make that motion.
all right. All in favor? TDA? Any opposition? All right, so,
I do think we still have to enter into public hearing
okay.
formally for the budget, right?
Sure.
Allison, is that correct? Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
We just need to open a comment period for public hearing, and
Okay.
then if there are no comments, you can close it, and then they'll have up to 24 hours
Okay.
afterwards.
All right. So I'll open up for comments now. Any comments? All right, so we'll close the public comment section, and then you've got 24 hours to submit any kind of comments regarding this. And then if no comments are made or objections, then the budget will be approved. All right. All right, we can jump back to page 5. So this is going to be the collections report through, are we missing the second page?
It's behind it.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's missing in my packet.
It's missing in your packet.
No.
Oh,
It goes into the budget.
it is in mine. Let's see.
All
if it's-
right.
Oh, the second page is missing?
No, not for, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it
This
looks
goes
like
through
it's missing
February. It doesn't have the,
Okay, I'll be glad to give you all an overview. And Amber, is Amber in here?
She's in council chambers
Okay,
watching.
if she just wants to email out so everyone has the second page. The collections are up to date through May. Unfortunately, they are down from May of 19, and they are down by about 58% from May of 2019. I know we were not here for the April meeting, but that was down about 44%. Now, I will remind you that this is a month behind, so whenever you see May numbers, you're actually looking at what your April collections were. So, but all collections are up to date, and it's been a while since we've met, so I'll just remind you that Serena Inn is now operating as Super 8, so that's why you do not see any collections for them. If you have, on your second page, you would have seen total collections of, to date, of $157,639.01. And May collections by themselves are $8,940.01. So that is our customer collection report. If you turn your page to, you turn your page to 6, you have your profit and loss budget versus actual through May. And you will see that, again, the total collection is $157,639.01. And our year-to-date collections are down about 10%, a little over 10% from last year. So that's our totals to date numbers. We're about 83% through the year in our budget, just because of the way the months kind of fall behind. And we've collected over 80%, so budget-wise, we're actually tracking pretty good. We typically budget conservatively, so the good thing is, budget-wise, we'll probably be fine, even if we have to use a little bit of fund balance. So we should be okay. Are there any questions about any of the revenues or expenditures that you see? I think the one only change that would be reflective of what we did in the last meeting that we were together is you'll see legal fees of $2,500, and that was for the trademark that the Tourism Board approved for us to pay for the Totally Fly campaign.
Yeah, I have one question. I was looking at, let's go back one page. Why was no January collection 2019?
Are you looking at the very first column?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm probably gonna bore you with a little bit of accounting right now.
Okay.
So our books, whenever we are audited, are done on a full accrual basis, which means that whenever you see your final July numbers, you see zero, because it's so confusing. We accrue what we collect in July back to June.
Okay.
But because of the way that we report to you in tourism and it being 1 month behind, it looks like it shows zero. What actually happens is whenever we do our full accrual, you have 2 months of collection in June.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I know
I do
that's
that.
like
I understand.
accounting speak.
No, I do that too. I understand what you're doing.
Okay, I was trying not to bore everybody
No,
with the
no.
details, but.
I understand exactly what happened.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, Allison, are we, just because I don't have the second page and I can look at it when
Yeah.
Amber gets it, did any properties not pay?
No, everyone is up to date. The only one that is showing your zero is the Serena Inn.
Perfect.
Since they're Super 8 now.
And I know we had a reserve fund originally for like 22%, and then we took it down to the bare minimum of 8%.
Our working fund balance policy.
How is that balance looking? Is it?
So, I do, as part of my year-end projections, I'll do a fund balance projection. And our fund balance projection is, it's gonna hold pretty steady for this year. I think we were around, $40,000. And so, since the board voted not to have a working fund balance policy, which is basically saying above and beyond what we're required to keep as savings, we're going to set aside some additional funds in case of an emergency. But you all wanted that to go to advertising, and if we ran into an issue, we would kind of deal with it.
Okay.
So our working fund balance policy, we don't have anymore, but we do have certain amounts that are required to be set aside by state statute. And so we're doing good on that. We've got about probably at the end of the year about 40 to 50,000 that's going to be in our fund balance. However, I have appropriated around, I believe, 20,000 to supplement our 2021 budget in case our collections don't rebound quite as much as we hoped. But we're fine on our fund balance. I would not recommend any additional use of fund balance at this time until we see what our collections do. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
And just one more thing on collections. I see some of these hotels and places like doing like $100, $200. Do you all send them a bill, or do they just look at their revenue for the month and say, we owe you this? How we know that they truly reporting what they collection? Because that's cheating the city and the county, if they're not being
Right.
truthful.
So they are required to submit I don't remember what the form number is. You're probably more familiar with it than I am, but it's a tax form that they have to complete that shows us what their gross revenues are, what any exempt revenues would be, so to speak, and then what their net revenues would be that are taxable. And that's what they submit to us and to the city. Now, we do typically try to get together with the city to make sure what they're reporting to us and what they report to the city is kind of the same, just in case, there's any inconsistencies. That would certainly be a red flag. Barring an audit where we
Yeah.
had someone go into the hotels.
So you don't have an auditor?
We have an auditor. We do not have an auditor that has been engaged to go into the hotels and audit them. And so that's going to be a little bit difficult to do. I'm going to just give you a real honest answer. I don't know that either the city or the county have the staff that could actually do that. Okay. Not because of competency, but because of just the time that it would take. I don't know if that's the answer you want, it's just an
No,
honest
no,
answer.
it just, no, and I understand, because the reason why I asked, because I drive hotels, and I
Right.
see, like, for instance, at the Irish Inn, they sold out. I'm just keeping it real with you. They have extended stay people there. I think that, being honest with you, I think that we could get more money from them.
But
Well, I
but it's one of those things also, if we do one hotel, we'd have to do them all. We
Gotcha.
really would.
So I tell you what I would welcome from you I mean, because I've never operated a hotel, so I certainly don't know what all the reports are they file. If you could give us an idea of maybe, an additional form that they would file, let's say to the Department of Revenue or the IRS, that we could somehow compare to what is sent to us.
Okay.
That would give us another reassurance that their reportings are consistent. And if they're messing those up, then they are dealing with the Department of Revenue and the IRS. So if you have any ideas about that, I would certainly welcome that. That would be something that would be really simple for us to check, even if we just did a sample every year.
Okay,
So I appreciate that suggestion.
thank you.
All right, Edward, if you guys get audited next year, I don't want to hear it.
Oh, it's
I don't want to hear it.
We'll call it an annual sample. I
Let me
like
say-
sample. It's a lot less of a.
I can be honest with you. ZMC Hotels, we have a big department. I know we paying our stuff. Yeah.
All right.
Right now, might be different, but.
Yeah. Because the more money hotels make, the more money we can put, you know. Thank you.
So if we don't have any more questions on that, I know there's one other item on the agenda, and then due to limitations and people in one room at one time, Allison will step out, yeah.
So I'm not sure, do they have, this was the one that was electronic, right, the audit contract?
Yeah, so they had a emailed copy, and then there's a couple of copies on the tables and paper clips, so if you wanted to review that briefly, it is several pages, so I hope you had time yesterday to look through it.
So, and I'll kind of give you an overview of what was in that electronic file. So, one of the things you approved in the budget was for us to have an audit done, and that is a requirement for our tourism authority because it's actually a separate entity. When it's on EIN, we have to have a separate audit from the county, and that is a little different from the city. So, you approved the budget fee in the budget, but we are actually required by the local government commission to have the actual contract approved. So in your file you received yesterday, it included the contract to audit the accounts, which is what is submitted to the state, and they're required to report what fees they're charging us, and it is required to be signed off by our chairperson and myself. And then it included an engagement letter with the audit firm, which is Nunn, Brashear, and Azale. And then the final thing included is they're required to be peer reviewed every 2 years, I believe it is, and that peer review report was included as well. So I will have to have board approval to proceed with the contract to audit accounts if there are no questions.
Any questions about that? All right, can I get a motion
So moved.
and a second? All in favor? Any opposition? All right.
All right.
Do you have a copy of that you need me to sign?
Yes, I'll bring it over there to
All right,
you.
perfect.
Thank you all very much.
No problem.
Thank you.
All right, we'll pick up back under city collections. This will be page 11. All right, so 2019, 2020, we were doing really good. Numbers were up, and then obviously COVID hit, so April and May's numbers are both down.
I would just like to point out here, as you can see, we don't have June's numbers yet, but the running total is around $800,000 for total collections for the city's 5%. So we're already outperforming the 17-18 year without a crisis. So I think it kind of just speaks to the resilience of our community, that we can still collect well enough on comparable years when there's not another crisis going on. The other thing I wanted to mention about the resiliency of our hotel market is that we still have a hotel being built right behind the Holiday Inn Express. We have interest from other hoteliers still about the Maxwell Center property. So I think we just have a very strong market. And when I talk to some of our other colleagues in Eastern North Carolina, from Raleigh eastward, just about every department has furloughed or eliminated positions going to next fiscal year. So we're very strong. I think we should be grateful and appreciative of the market we're in. I think a lot has to do with the fact that we're agricultural, a lot of it's still business transient market that's starting to come back for the base. Yes, so we're still doing well despite circumstances.
Have you guys noticed an
Well, you know,
uptick?
the good thing, the Hotel Motel Association, you know, the hotel did push past 4% for the first time since March. So the economy in hotels is coming back roaring. You know, my hotel in Goldsboro, we sold out 120 rooms at the Best Western last weekend. And the Hampton Inn sold out 111 rooms last weekend. At this moment, my hotel, like the other night, we ran 70%. So I do see an uptick in the market, you know, and, you know, that coming back right here. And what we did not do, we kept rate integrity. We did not drop the rate, because once you start dropping the rates and stuff, then the guests be like, oh my God, why we can't get this? So we did not up the rate, but we just kept the rate, you know, right there, so.
All right, any other questions on collections? We'll go to the bar graph there that just shows,
It shows the sad display of the year-over-year comparisons. But there's silver lining.
all right, star reports.
Let's get your magnifying glass out,
Yeah.
sorry.
Obviously, you know, collections are going to be down, occupancy down, 80, everything's down, which is to be expected, except for supply is the same. You know, unfortunately, I don't think there's much else we could have done to offset COVID, and hopefully, as Edward said, things are going to start bouncing back there. Any questions on that? Nope. All right. Page 14 just shows the hotels that are reporting in that star report. And then page 15 is the star report for hotels that are in the same kind of range as what we're looking for in the Maxwell Center. So again, there, very similar trends. ADR wasn't down much compared to the overall hotel, about 5% difference, so that's pretty good that you guys held rates there. Again, RevPAR down. But you do notice that from April to May, it's ticking back up, so that's a good sign. Again, page 16 kind of covers the 4 hotels that are in that star report. Any questions on that?
Just another point of information, the top performing hotels in the market are the hardest hit. So more of the economy hotels are performing a little bit better, but the more franchise, higher name, better branded flags are taking the hardest hit during this time. So, but it is getting better.
Yeah, and the hotels are doing the best is your extended stay properties. The extended stay properties is really performing because of the fact, you know, you have a lot of construction workers, they can reduce their rates, and the reason why they can reduce their rates because they have no overhead with cleaning the room not every day, and they have kitchens.
All right, are you going to handle inquiries?
Yeah, so for the hungry. So for the month of March, April, and May, I'll just give you an update on the inquiries for those months. March, we had 300 inquiries still. Those are digital inquiries. March, there was a really big hit for videos or YouTube channels. We still had a lot of good digital marketing going, and people were getting good hits. April, we had 213. These are all digital inquiries, no phone calls. May was 151. So there is a downtrend of inquiries into our market, which is to be expected. We hope by July we start seeing a little bit more phone calls, foot traffic, more traditional type inquiries coming through our doors. Well, we shall see. I think COVID might have impacts that last and change things for a while. not forever, so we'll see.
All right, tourism development master plan update.
So in your packet, I included on page 17 through, I believe, 21.
Yep.
Let me just go ahead and put down a screen for anyone watching on Facebook. Okay, so I include the slides that are just a summary of observations of the research done so far in this tourism master plan project. So originally, this project was supposed to commence January of 2020 and end July 2020. It was supposed to take 6 months, but COVID has delayed that, and I'll sort of explain. So we were fortunate enough to gather and hit our surveys and hit some of these travelers and visitor markets before COVID started impacting the world. So all of this data that we have is pre-COVID, normal times. It's organic. It doesn't have any sort of impact from the situation that we're in now and how it's affected our travelers. So that is good. But now what we're going to have to do before we can continue this project is kind of wait out the storm a little bit longer, because there's still a second part of the data and research that we want to get from our local stakeholders and constituents. So we're probably going to pick this project back up in about mid-September, which works out nicely because the consultant for this project is coming back from an interim position he's taking in Asheville with their CVB. So whenever he gets back from that interim position, he's going to pick back up on this project and start doing stakeholder interviews and more surveys within our local market to get a better grasp on what people want. And to have that input and public engagement is important, to have the support, but also it has to be something that they want that drives visitation into our market. So the good thing about the data that we collected pre-COVID is that it comes at just the right time. And this is going to very much help us understand what people know about us, what they don't know about us, geographically speaking, where are they, that they're coming from, what radius should we be looking at, should it be more local, should it be more regional, who do they look like, do they have kids, are they young, are they older? So this has been very helpful for us to start crafting a media plan based off of this research. It'll also be the foundation for when we want to look at adding product to our market that is more fixed attraction. So it's not just more events and festivals, but what if it is beautification projects? What if it's things like water parks, things that we don't know yet are feasible in our market, but this is the plan that's going to help us determine that. So this is the foundation of the research, just to give you the summary observations. On page 21, there is the next steps for where we're going to go. As I said, the project is going to take a brief hiatus. Then they're going to kind of determine the timing for stakeholder survey launch, which we've estimated to be about mid to late September. We're going to start doing workshops and interviews with them. And then that's when we take all that data that we have now, what we're going to have from the stakeholders, and put together these development strategies and build action steps for this long-term plan on how do we achieve more assets in our market, legitimize us better as a destination, and kind of just figure out where we're going to go from here. And one of the biggest hangups that he identified is basically the structure of the organization. It is very complicated. There's a lot of red tape just from the legislation. Our city this is a city department, yet there's a TDA segment, and then there's limitations on what you can do with the money. And so he's provided different scenarios as to if you were to move forward and grow tourism in your market, the way it's structured now hinders our ability to do this. And he can explain it a lot better than I can. So we're probably, if he can come back in July or do some sort of Zoom WebEx to the board, we would love to have him back at the July 22nd meeting to give a little bit better rundown of summary of this research, of the project, and then basically just food for thought on the way this organization is structured and how it should be structured in the future. Should it still be a city department? Should it be independent? Should it be something that is an arm of the city or the county? And a lot of that isn't just what we can do here at this level. It'll have to go back to the state, most likely coming back to elected officials to rewrite that legislation if we wanted to make changes for future growth. So just a heads up, we're probably going to have him back to talk more about this project if he can, just depending on his schedule. Do y'all have questions? I know a lot of us in this room are part of the steering committee, so we went over this in the June 9th meeting. Chris came and shared for 3 hours the research. It was very informative, very enlightening as to what Goldsboro needs to work on and improve on.
I just have one comment, Ashton. When you say change the legislation, are you saying what we can do locally? Or are you saying go back to Raleigh?
Well, I think anything that we do change, we'll have to have the blessing and support locally, right, from our elected officials here before we start calling on our state elected officials to
I
change.
just say right now, getting something out of the state, changing travel and tourism legislation.
I think if our local bill that we have, if we see that there's any weaknesses or any changes that need to be made, that's what I think they're looking at is,
Yeah.
All right.
And it's based upon how other,
yeah.
he looked at, here's similar areas in
Yeah.
North Carolina, and here's how they're structured.
Well, I just know
Here's areas that have convention centers and how they do
the hard
revenue
time we
splits.
had trying to get the county set
Right.
down.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the way it's structured now, there is no other organization in the state of North Carolina or in the South that he can think of that is structured the way we are.
Yeah, but I want to point out too, it wasn't us. It
Oh,
was
I
the
know.
legislature.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not to throw shade on anyone and the history. Like, I get it. We're just kind of left with the ripple effects of things that happened in the past.
But if this is an opportunity to look at it and change it the way we want it to
Absolutely.
be.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
I have a question. So the study so far, have they determined what is your number 1, 2, 3 in businesses that are bringing in the occupancy tax, i.e. the military or construction or, sporting events, food venues? What's bringing our people here? The Maxwell Center? Do you have that data yet?
So, yes and no. It's more of a, let me see if I can go back to, there's a slide in here that talks about
I think it's 18.
the biggest driver is still business travelers that make up the majority of overnight visitors in Wayne County. But, and I don't have the slide here, but what is really interesting about our market is we are very even across the weeknights and weekends. So if you look, there's no spike during the week, there's no spike during the weekend. We are very even keel, which means we have strong business and we've got strong leisure. So as far as the true demand generators for the weekend and weekday, he didn't dive into what are the biggest accounts business-wise that are coming here, but it is very telling that government has a huge demand here.
Because all the reservists that come into town complain they have to stay 45 minutes away because they can't get a hotel
Correct,
rate.
yeah, and so we're working on that. I mean, the fact that there's a new hotel being built behind the Holiday Inn Express, we are just very close to a hotel adjacent to the Maxwell Center. That is going to capture some more of that demand to make it more pleasant when they have to do their duty weekends here for reservists.
Yeah, we need to look at that per diem rate, right, that the
Yeah,
military will pay.
That hotel coming behind the Holiday Inn Express is going to be geared to more of your,
Correct,
Construction.
but it's hotel room nights, and if they meet the criteria for government is it BPR, what is it called? BPM, whatever their contracts are for base, then they'll receive rooming lists. It's not a huge property, I think it's only 50 units, but that's a roster for the 9/16th. So yeah, I mean, there is data that shows the strength of our market, but it doesn't get granular as to exactly the businesses that are producing the revenue for business, but it does have surveys that show when people are coming here for leisure, what is bringing them here. And this is not unique to our area, but a lot of it is they're visiting family. That is one of the number 1 drivers for people coming into Goldsboro on the weekend. But if you go look at New York City, if you go look at Raleigh, Atlanta, that is also their number 1 driver, believe it or not. So it's typical in tourism. Any other questions? I think a lot of questions that maybe we don't even know we have, he's gonna answer a lot of this in July if we can get him back.
Well, that should drive your marketing, right? When you know what your market is, who's coming.
Exactly, and so whenever, later on, down here in new business, when I show you the media plan and the combined budget, a lot of this speaks to the data that we've received so far, with who's coming in, why, where, and we're being very strategic with how we're spending those dollars because of the data we have to know who we need to be talking to convert them, not just from maybe we'll visit to we will visit and they're gonna stay the night. And so we're converting them into actual visitors. So I know we're gonna be a little bit long-winded, so I wanted to move along if we can. So the next item is item I, the History Channel. So they're in town, the History Channel, after a year, finally planning, and just one thing after another, they're here. Right now, they're at Performance East, they're getting B-roll footage of some of their machinery, they're gonna take some of the dirt bikes, ATVs, out to Busco Beach, the county's favorite place, and they're gonna do some more of their script out there. There's no mud bash, there's nothing crazy going on. It'll look very peaceful out there at the current moment. But
Take the Wednesday just for you, Craig.
yeah, but I think I know why the hotels were sold out for a couple weekends. I think Busco Beach had something to do with that. But at any rate, then after that, they're going to be going to downtown several times throughout the next 2 days to get B-roll, to do some of their other film locations that incorporate local businesses, to our Fire Station 1, the 1919 fire truck. So they're going to pull in, and just as a reminder what the show is about, it's about exciting modes of transportation. And their slogan is, it's not where you go, it's how you get there. And so they want to do it in exciting, thrilling ways. And so they're showing off the history of our trains to planes in Goldsboro. They're showing off our Busco Beach ATV park, and they're going to showcase us in a light that I don't think we're even familiar of seeing ourselves in. So I think this is going to be really cool for Goldsboro on not just locally, but on a national level. The season is expected to start July 20th on Sunday nights at 8 p.m. on History Channel. And I believe our air date might be around August 27th. I have to double check again, but that could change, just depending on when they finally get all their filming done and editing. But yeah, so Josie's out there with them right now, and then I'll go out and join them whenever we wrap up today. So if you have any questions on their schedule, anything like that, feel free to email, call me, and I can get you that information.
All right, Tourism Resource Program. So this is the grant program that we do twice a year. Obviously, COVID had some impact on this as well. So we had 2 applicants for the spring 2020. The first was the Sunrise Kiwanis, which we already granted them last year, or fall of this year. And since their event was canceled because of COVID, we've advised them to just carry that money over for the greater Goldsboro Road Run to next year. So essentially, instead of re-granting them any additional dollars, just use the dollars we gave you to go ahead and pass along the next year. So with that said, we only had 1 applicant. It's the Freedom Fest. There's a couple packets floating around if anyone wants to review it. This is Tourism 2020 program. They're requesting $1,000. This is kind of the continuation merger of Poultry Festival and Wings of Wayne. So new festival, so they don't have a lot of data to go for last year's attendance. They're anticipating 10,000 visitors with some room nights as well. Tim's heavily involved in kind of the organization of that stuff, so if there's any specific questions, Tim can speak to them. But if no one has any objections, the recommendation's kind of been to just, we'll have 1 vote just to approve the $1,000 awarding to that, and then we won't award the other $1,000 to anyone, and we'll just roll that in to help offset any kind of budget deficits that we have this year because of COVID.
I can just add a couple words. So this was supposed to go in May on the third Saturday, which would have been Armed Forces Day, and been in support of our local active duty military as well as, other state North Carolina military facilities. But unfortunately, COVID caused that to be canceled, so we pushed that to August 22nd. Hopefully, upcoming guidance will allow us to do the North Carolina Freedom Fest then. We should know, in the middle of July, we need to make a decision on whether we're going to do it or not. So we'll be pending North Carolina governor executive orders. But if we can do it, we have talent like Edwin McCain coming, which should be great to bring people in from outside the city for hotels and things, which would be nice, as well as get things kicked up downtown. So the plan overall is about a $45,000 to $50,000 budget for this. So there's been a lot of sponsorship that's gone into it, and this is just an additional amount of money that will help properly advertise the event if we can do it.
And so their goal is to leverage the $1,000 to go towards their Lamar bill for billboards to help advertise the event around the area. So some more details can be seen in that packet. Any other questions? All right. Can we get a motion to approve granting the $1,000 to the Freedom Fest?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? All right.
Great. Okay, so we're going to move on to the budget for next year. So in your packet, there is the granular breakdown. This is the Excel spreadsheet that'll make your eyes bleed if you look at it too long. But so I'm going to point out, so this page 22 is what is been voted on. Then if you look at page 23, I've done some funds transfers, and I'll explain to you some of the minor differences. Brad, would you mind getting the PowerPoint up on the screen? So in your packet, this is for your reference to kind of go home, just nighttime reading if you want. And then on the presentation, I'm going to show you, this will kind of explain it a little bit better as to what we're doing. So just right off the bat, as we wait for the presentation to come up, so as you know, we received $40,000 extra to go into our budget for media and advertising plans. So if we look down, there's tons of object of expenditures. You got it. Line 3700, it says advertising. If you go all the way across to the column that says adopted, FY 2021. Let's see. That has, let me make sure I've got it all looking right. It has $119,819, okay? That is with the added $40,000 put in there. Now, I didn't want all $40,000 going to advertising, so I'm recommending that we put $36,000 of that $40,000 into advertising, and the other $4,000 is going to be divvied up into some travel, fees and dues to help go back into some local sponsorships to people who come and say, can you help me with XYI event? And then also to training FAM tours. So that's when we call up journalists, we plan these nice weekends, they come out, they have an experience, they go home and write pages on their print or digital advertorial. And it's not paid, but it's an experience firsthand that is earned media that we couldn't get otherwise because we don't have a big enough budget to pay for these 2 to 3 page exposés about us. All right, so you want to turn, again, this is going to summarize on these screens what our budget looks like and a little bit easier what we normally look at. So we have the TDA budget over here, their portion of what they're paying for that Allison explained earlier today and we voted on. It doesn't say $195,000 because there's $12,000 of reserve fund for the town of Mount Olive, so that doesn't apply to us as a board. So it's $12,000 less. In this column, it's the city's portion of the budget, which are summaries of the line items that you see in your packet today, which is like the hard actual financials. And then over here in budget, these are the total numbers. So this is with the $40,000 added into the advertising line item. So I'm going to just go ahead and just point out, so this is the overall budget number, $408,502 collectively between both boards, or both pockets of money. So here's how I've divvied it up. So instead of all 40,000 going straight in here, we're gonna put 36,000 into the advertising line item. We're gonna bump up the dues and subscriptions. Looks like these kind of got off a little bit. This bar should be down here at 8,050. So then $1,500 goes back into our FAM tours. So I'm just gonna back it up in a second so you guys can see the differences. And I've added $2,300 into meetings and travel. And this is why. So a lot of the conferences that were canceled this year, I've gotten my registration fee applied for next year. But that doesn't mean that my hotels are still paid for, the meals are paid for, the mileage is paid for. So I've had to add in order to redeem this rain check for registration, I'm adding in some travel costs so I can get there. And some of these meetings, I'm going to explain to you in depth what I've laid out for travel for next year so you understand how those dollars are working. But as you can see, the overall total budget is still the same, so it's $408,502. So we still have a very healthy budget, advertising budget. Like this year, we had $119,000, and so we have $4,000 less going into next fiscal year in the middle of a COVID crisis. So we're still going to be able to have a good amount of power going into next year. The difference is we have now data that's going to help us strategize who we need to hyper-focus on to get visitation back into the hotel market. Any questions on that so far? I'll send out this presentation this afternoon to you. Okay, so fees and dues. This is also in your packet that you can reference here. I just snipped it up onto a presentation. Not too much it's going to change. The reason why I just took out Civil War trails altogether is, as in recent events, it's just not something that we want to maybe put money into right now. We're just going to take that out altogether, and it was $800 or nothing, so $300 wouldn't even help keep the signs up that we have on historical markers. And then instead, I took out that $300 and I added it here. There's already $200 in the pocket for sponsorship fees for local organizations. So there's $500 out there for people who need help just with very minimal things like Coach Whitfield does a baseball clinic every year. He usually asks for sponsorship because it brings in about 40 room nights to the market. So we give them a couple $100 here and there. Same thing with DGDC for some of their events. We usually sponsor them a couple $100 to help them with their events. Travel, so here's where it gets a little bit like, what the what? So we went back because there's some things that are just not going to happen next year. So they're not doing a regional PR mission. The Visit North Carolina does this media mission every year, and this is a great way for us to meet new contacts for people in travel journalism. So whether they have print, their social media influencers, their bloggers, their Instagram influencers, these are the people we get to go meet and encourage them to come to Goldsboro and share with their followers. So we're not going to the regional one, we're just going to go to the state one. That should be in Raleigh, depending how things pan out in the fall. So we took $1,000 and I put it towards the Visit NC 365 conference. And I'm not going to go into some of the, this is going to get really granular, but I did, as you can see, make changes into these highlighted areas. So one of the biggest ones is that Connect Sports, this conference was canceled. So we've moved this $3,000 down to sports, which is a conference that is it's very boutique. So it's for markets like ours that are smaller, very niche, that are a little bit better fit for us, that we have a better chance of getting. They're not world championships and world cups. These are regionals. These are things that would be better fit for our market and for our hotel inventory. So that's in Colorado. There is a possibility that I could get a grant, so that money, I don't have to spend it all, but I'm still waiting to hear back if I receive that grant, so it'll offset some of the costs. These are very expensive conferences. Sports ETA, I have a registration to go, credit to go in the fall, or in the spring of next year to Birmingham, but with flights, it's a week long, so with a flight, with hotel costs, it's still around $2,000. Visit NC, normally 2 people from our office go, but it'll just be 1 this year. And then other are things like when Amber goes around town to drop off things to the hotels or go and meet X, Y, and Z group. When I go and travel to the airport and back, like these are just gas mileage reimbursement costs. Last year, we used it to go to Convention South with the Maxwell Center, because there's about $2,000 in there, so we used it for a registration fee to send Josie. Any questions on this? Okay. FAM tours, we originally requested 5,000. It was cut to 1,500, so I wanted to put 1,500 back into that line item so that we can still do these FAM tour weekends.
So you said it was what? So you requested 5,000?
Yeah, so last year, we saved $100, but I wanted to do $500 again. But due to budget cuts, we had to cut 1,500. But when we received the $40,000 to supplement our, I took $1,500 and I put it into this category. So that this is also very important to our advertising and our reach.
Can
Okay.
you go back
Yeah.
to the, keep going, the one that's the combined budget?
Yeah.
IT tech lease capital debt services. Do you know what that is? It's a
I
$5,000 expense we've never had.
I believe we're doing upgrades next year. If I understood that right in our finance meetings, are we not? We're doing
I would
upgrades?
imagine it's spreading the cost of the IT. Each department pays a percentage of IT upgrades.
Okay, yeah. I
And this is
believe
just,
that's what it
this
was.
isn't a yearly thing, this is a,
No,
as
it's
they do.
every, like, 3 years. or
3 years,
something.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Different departments.
It might also include our lease for our copier machine too.
Well, it's just never been in the
Yeah.
budget before, so.
Well, yeah, so I wanted, yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, so I want to make sure this is as thorough and every line item is on the table. Before I move into what we're doing with this bucket of money for the advertising, do you have any questions about this combined budget going to fiscal year 2021? Okay. Let me cruise through. Okay, so Josie put together this presentation, but we wanted someone to be with History Channel today, so I'm going to do my best to explain our thought process behind this. She does this more day in and day out than I do, so she has so much better way of describing this, but I will do my best.
You gonna do it in the accent?
No, no, you're going to get all Americana here. Okay, so just real quick, I wanted to do a brief recap of the marketing strategy that's backed by the research we've gotten from our master plan so far. Then we're going to do the overall marketing budget breakdown. And then today, for the sake of time, we are going to focus mostly on the largest portion of our marketing, which is destination marketing. And I'll explain to you what the other media plans are, but they're not as relevant. I don't think you guys really care as much about that stuff, but let me go into, okay, so real quick, we have a single-minded goal for next year, drive overnight visitation. We are focusing so heavily, if not every dollar we have, on digital and social media influencer, because we can track it. We know what it's doing. We can retarget it. And then the focus messaging, also based on the research we got, is culinary travel. All right, food is a really big driver, really big traction on our social media and digital advertising. And our target audience is going to be based on research results that I'm going to share with you now. So Goldsboro, Wayne County converts visitors at a much higher rate among close-in local travelers than those living more than 100 miles away. So we do really well. This is the competitive set that we carved out for ourselves when we look at what other destinations are doing around us in Eastern North Carolina. And we typically, on a lot of the other comparison charts, fall down here. Kinston and Goldsboro are down here, but we do really well with our close-in market, which is within a 100-mile radius. So that's where we're going to focus geographically where our ads are going on our digital platforms. Unfortunately, we have a lot less of a positive opinion within that 100-mile market, so our what I would call our close-in market. So that means we have a lot of work to do, right? So for some reason, our day trippers and our close-in market doesn't have the highest opinion of Goldsboro. And I don't think that's new to us. That's no surprise. I think we all struggle with people constantly, with a negative reputation. So that said, this is where we're going to focus our dollars and our money for that reputation. Looks like 1/4 of familiar travelers would put the area at the top of their consideration set. That means with the survey data we have, this is who we're going to target, right? So overnight visitors, we have the most market potential between 18 to 34-year-olds with families. So believe it or not, whenever you have a social media account, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, it knows your demographics. It knows based off of your research on Google or whatever search engine. If you have kids, it knows so much about you. And so that translates into this data aggregate for our digital marketing to know exactly we're going to target people like me to come here with young children because it's a little bit easier to get to. It's not as threatening. There's no high traffic. It's affordable. There's things to see. It's very outdoor, and there's a lot of good restaurants that aren't too fancy.
So older people just don't like us.
No, they do. As you see, it's not bad. It's just they're not on digital. You know what I mean? Like it's harder to reach them, and it's more expensive to reach them. Top of mind, so this is the topic, the theme that we're going to push on the content that we're delivering to the younger generation that have kids. Restaurants and barbecue. Combined, that's about 8% of what people want from us and what they know about us. And we just need to push that a little bit more as a reason to come here. And there's so much barbecue. There's so many good casual dining experiences to be had. And I kid you not, every time we post, either it's Mickey's Pastries, whether it's a barbecue picture on Facebook alone, it gets 100% more likes and engagement than any other content we could put out there. And people love our food. It is one of the most positive receiving messages that people get. And it's one of the hardest hit sectors of our economy, so we really need to drive people back into our market for food, and since there's so much of it, we're selling them the overnight stay to go with it.
Ashlyn, can you talk at all to the Paramount Theater? You know, some of the professional performances we've had there have been really good. I would think that might bring people into town.
So yes, like I think it has potential, but I think the hoteliers could speak to this too. For some reason, and when I was on the hotel side, I worked so hard with Betsy and Sherry Archibald to get these package stays, to get them to stay overnight, and it just doesn't happen. I think it's just a geographic thing. I think people will come in at a good driving radius to the Paramount, and they don't, because it's not as accessible. There's not a hotel right next to the Paramount. It just isn't, if they're going to drive back and forth to the hotel, they're just going to drive home.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is,
The downtown
the bigger acts that come to the Paramount are also touring in other areas. Like, it's not like
Yeah.
they're coming just from New York
Right.
and then they're going to Goldsboro and going back.
Yeah, they're going to Raleigh
Raleigh
afterwards.
and Greensboro. So you start losing some of that pull when you get some of the bigger acts.
I think there's potential there. I think it's just a matter of if downtown ever gets like a boutique hotel or a hotel in general or more of a traditional style bed and breakfast, I think it could drive overnight or capture some of that, but not currently or historically. And as you can see, the research just doesn't, Paramount just is not a top of mind awareness or a word that came up. Again, activities familiar with travelers is our food. So that barbecue is, again, a big driver, but these are some of the top things. They're all very competitive with one another, ranging within just 10% of what people know about us or why they would come to Goldsboro or Wayne County. Yeah, so Seymour Johnson, the reason why I didn't highlight this as a big driver is they're coming here anyways for Seymour Johnson to work, and it's not an accessible destination unless you're going to come here for that once a month tour, which does put heads in beds, but it's just a one time off thing. So we wanted something that's a little more easy to access right now, year round, anytime. And this is what we can push, is our food. Okay, so after all that research, just to say, this is the overall breakdown of that advertising. So $115,800 with the biggest amount of money going into this destination marketing to help bring visitors back into our market. The other breakdown is we have $10,000 for the Maxwell Center because driving meetings back into our market is very important. Same for sports. We have Quidditch coming back in the fall. fingers crossed. We should know about mid-July if that will actually happen. And then we need better content for food, and we need better content, or pictures rather, and video for the content we want to deliver. And that takes money to get very good stuff that we can work with. We also wanted to bring the tourism assistance program back in for $4,000. We have $2,000 in the fall and $2,000 in the spring to help events. And then we have an unplanned projects and costs bucket for $5,300 that's not programmed into any contracts or advertising at this moment. Here is a breakdown of the 10 segments that $77,000 is going to go into. You received the scenarios in that email that I sent out when we were wanting that $40,000 to go through, and it has a lot of information as to why, how, what this supports. All but number 4, which is the billboard, are digital. You will not see us in a magazine. You're not going to see us in the Flashpoint on base. It's a one-off, and we don't get traction. The return on investment, we just can't even measure it. This is measurable, and if we notice something's not working, great, we redirect, or we change the content out just like that. It takes a lot less time to design. It just makes so much more sense, and we've never just been all in, we're going to do it this way, ever before. We've always tried to do everything and scatter the money out to do TV and radio and this and that. And it doesn't make a splash. So when you're a smaller destination and we have the research to show exactly who we need to talk to, it makes total sense that we're going to hit digital with the 18 to 34-year-old market range who love our food, who maybe like us, but they're a little bit hesitant, and we just need to show off that you can come here. The only thing I'm going to point out is number 10. So we want to do this thing called a partner program for co-op advertising. Back before COVID, we reached out to about 50 of the local tourism partners, from hotels to attractions to breweries, asking them how much they spend on marketing. That data is a little outdated now because I'm not really sure how much people are carving out for advertising anymore. But we thought if we could spend close to $10,000, and this is usually more locally focused, like the Buzz, the Go, local billboards, and we have this buy-in, and we sell them, say, hey, here's a full page. You only have to pay for a half a page. So it's giving them a discount because we're going to offset the cost. It's basically like we're subsidizing the advertising for our local partners. Here's the problem, right? Because the way our boards are structured. If they say, yeah, you guys are paying $1,000 for my billboard, and I only have to pay $500 for that 3-month flight. How are we going to get that $500 back without having to go to city council? So that's where it's kind of like, this is going to be weird. So I'm trying to work with Allison on getting any sort of like confirmation with the legal realm that we can make this work, right? Like we can say we want to sell you guys discounted advertising because we're putting up the most amount of money. But we're just trying to figure out if we're going to get that money back, right? Because if I spend $1,000 on an ad and they're paying me $500, well, I'm still paying $1,000. I'm not getting that $500 back to help go towards the bigger buy, right? So that $9,000 is more like $18,000, but we're getting way more footprint on advertising our local market. So I'm still working that out. So if we don't use that $9,000 because we can't make this partner program work because we can't get the money recouped back in our appropriated budget, then that $9,000 will most likely go back into our digital ad campaign. Or it's $9,000 that we figure out something else with. But that would be the goal, is we're going to put that back into our digital to give it more muscle, even more muscle to get in front of people and cut through the noise, because there's a lot of noise on digital.
How do we recoup funds for things like t-shirt sales and that little bit of revenue?
Yeah, so last year what we did is, and there's a line item in the main budget called merchandise for resale, line 2921 on page 22.
You said 2921?
Yeah, it's called merchandise for resale. And there's
Assume
70.
This is where we produce the t-shirts?
Correct. So what this is based on historical sales of what we've done in the past. They say we're going to make $7,500 off of our merchandise going into next year. which is roughly what we've done this year. We've done about $8,000 to $9,000 of sales. So it's basically giving us like a payday loan, saying you're gonna make that money back, so here's your money up front from your like fund balance, knowing that it's just gonna be recouped. It's a wash, basically. Because we don't make profit off of it, it's just to have something to build local pride, wearables that say Goldsboro on it, things like that. Or they go towards tours, right? So like we're selling tours, we used to sell tours, not for a little while. And then that money just goes into this revenue line item, basically. But we don't get it back, it's just there now.
Yeah. Didn't know if it was an opportunity to leverage that model to do that, but this is a much different situation.
Yeah, it's different. If it was like 9,000, and that's something we can think about going to next year, just having the money program there already. But then it's iffy, right? Because I don't know how many people are going to contract, say, yeah, I'm going to pay for that ad. I want to do that with you. This is a new program, so it's kind of A/B testing if we do it this year. Let me see what else. Okay, so again, I'm going to send this out in an email. But this doesn't include the partner program, but this is basically our media calendar of what we're looking to do for the months coming up next year. We always have a lot of money being pumped into our destination marketing every month. That is where we want to hyper-focus right now. And not saying that Maxwell Center and the sports complex aren't important. It's just one of those things where we don't know if youth sports are going to come back. We don't know if colleges are going to let Quidditch play. I mean, we don't know if associations are going to have their meetings like they've traditionally done in the past right now. So, but it's still important to stay in front of those meeting planners. So it's one of those, yeah, we should still invest with still having a lot of unknowns.
Now, this is all completely separate from Air Show.
Correct. Air Show is different in that because we work with an ad agency. That was a new ad agency for 2019, and they're going to still be the same ad agency. We learned a lot from 2019 going into 2021. We had a lot of research that showed us what the areas of improvement need to be. There's going to be a lot more locally focused advertising. But the question is, will the Air Show happen?
Yeah, what's the other?
We don't know. Yeah. Still waiting to find out. And then we've had some contracts that are going to roll over into the new fiscal year because we stopped advertising. It just didn't feel appropriate to talk about coming to Goldsboro when there's travel bans. So these are going to be rollover. And that's it.
Were there any credits given on those rollovers, or did they just?
That is the credit, right? Like, so like we paid for it in a year in advance. We didn't use it. So this is what's
Perfect.
rolling over. Does anyone have any questions on that budget? Are you like the budget? You wish you saw something different?
I just have one comment. I mean, I get the digital is the way that a lot of people are going, but we're missing a lot of people if all that energy is just focused there. And I have voiced this before, and I'm going to say it again. I think it's a mistake to not continue to partner with local people, whether it's print, radio. Those partnerships, their bandwidth is incredible, and it's reaching people that are not, in front of their phones all the time. This is wonderful. I mean, the exposure that you all have done with the digital is incredible, but I really feel strongly that we're missing a big audience, whether it's tying in with the Paramount or other events, because what I hear locally a lot of times is people are like, well, I didn't even know what was going on. And it's like, how'd you not know what was going on? What can we do better to locally promote it? And there's not a time, and probably everybody in this room has gone to a local radio station, right, and done an interview. And your phone dings afterwards. Great interview. People are listening to it. So I know the goal is heads in beds, but it's also about creating that experience for people that are here, that are going to be spending money locally. So that's just my only,
Yeah, well, to
throwing it
speak
out
to
there.
that, two things that I've learned is, again, with the traditional routes of advertising, we're in a weird media market, right? It's either you do all local or you do regional, like within a 100-mile radius, because we're split between RAL and Raleigh and the Greenville media markets. So and I guess historically too, when we've done radio, and then I stopped doing radio, our visitation only went up because we transferred our money into digital. And we saw that it was working for us. And I know the importance of partnerships with our local advertisers. But I also feel that that's where that $9,000 is going to come in to help, because we're not putting on these events. We're only promoting what other people are doing, right? So we're just a mouthpiece. So we want to help people who are doing the doing get better exposure, because there's some sort of disconnect, right, about finding out what's going on. And so we want to invest in that ability for them to improve their exposure. So we've done improvements with Google listings with our local partners. And we've done, so if we can get this buy-in with our radio, Go, Buzz, that provides discount advertising, that means we are helping them talk about themselves instead of us just doing all the talking, but we're just increasing their ability to talk about themselves. Like, right, it's like tobacco and hops can be considered an attraction because it appeals to people who like to recreate in tobacco and hops. But if people don't know about tobacco and hops, is that
No,
the
that's my fault.
responsibility of
Right.
tourism? So that's where it's like, all right, well, I want to help you get out there, and we have money that can help put muscle into where maybe you don't have enough money. So that's where I'm like, all right, well, here's $1,000 to match your $1,000, and it's going to get you $2,000 worth of advertising. Does that make sense?
Sure, I mean, I get all that. I mean, I get it. I just,
Yeah, and I think it's hard, right? Like whenever we were talking about what do we got to do to make this research work? Am I 100% certain that this is going to put heads in beds? No, but if we don't try, I won't know either. And so, to your point, we've done traditional in the past. And the people who don't know what's going on, I don't know what to say about that. I mean, like, we're making more noise than ever before. But I do hear more often Goldsboro is a lot better than it used to be. So we're making progress in that way. But I have to be, here's where I fall, and this is my conflict. I understand the importance of partnerships, but it's not my job to pump money just for the sake of a partnership. It's my job to use this occupancy dollars the way I think it's to be most strategic and most beneficial for our market. And people, it's not just going to hit a 100-mile radius that's not here. Goldsboro is included in this 100-mile radius, so we're not just leaving out the market here. We're not just like putting a dome. But, we didn't get our return on radio and Buzz and Go
That's
as
what
much
I
as
think
we
the point
wanted.
that You're not getting, or I'm not hearing you get, is our partners, WGVR, whoever they are, and it don't matter who they are key to our events being successful. You have to have good businesses, good partnerships to make things, to have the support to ever make it successful. And that starts locally. I mean, that's just my opinion.
Well, the point I would make is, so Edward is a hotelier that generates these funds. This is 100% occupancy tax. It's not any other kind of tax dollar. If we're not doing things that put more heads in his beds to keep generating those funds, then we're going to fight a losing battle, and eventually those funds are going to go. Like if we focus on, let's advertise with people who are local, who are not staying in hotels.
And that's not exactly.
I'm not saying that. I think all your other stuff's good. I mean, what you're saying is
Yeah.
good. But you just can't forget local.
No, and I think this is the part, because the thing to remember is, when you spend $1,000 on advertising, and you spend $2,000 on advertising, you're not getting twice the reach. You're getting 4 to 5 times. Like, the more you can spend on advertising, the ad buy is just so much better. So by the partnership program will allow local companies, whether it's a hotel or someone putting on an event, to get more reach with the Go, the Buzz, WGBR. Because if I can spend $2,000 but only have to come out of pocket $1,000 because it's what I have,
It's a better buy.
we're putting more money into the local because we're getting a match for match. So travel and tourism doesn't have to put in as much occupancy tax funds to it. It incentivizes businesses to advertise more because, as the president of the Merchants Association, I can tell you, businesses locally do not market. I wouldn't even say, well, they just don't market. So they're not even getting the benefit of that. So by doing that, you're also incentivizing these businesses to say, well, I hadn't thought about spending $1,000, but if I can get $2,000 worth of ad buy out of it, it's a better investment for me. So now you're going to get that as well. So I think that's a really good place to benefit places like your local media markets, because it does things like
We
that.
just don't need to forget the locals.
Well, and then to be fair, since I've been director since 2016, I've never paid WGBR for any sort of traditional marketing throughout the year. Radio and billboards and print all have their good places, right? Like if there's a specific thing going on, like an air show, oh yeah, radio, print, billboards, because it's a very concentrated event happening. But just lackadaisical throughout the year, every month, I can't afford it. I mean,
No,
it's
and I'm not
hard.
insinuating that. I'm not saying why, go back to how it used to be done. No, not at all. I'm trying to make this more abundantly clear. It's just, I think, the concentration on just this, we're missing people. And so how can we strategically, not just, oh yeah, we'll do some ads or we'll do some billboards, strategically for those certain times of year. That's the only point that I'm saying. It's strategic brand awareness so that we can be top of mind when people think about a trip or an event at the Paramount or an event downtown for an Armed Forces Day or what have you. That was my only point. I'm sorry I didn't
No,
articulate
it's
it
good.
well.
The one thing I will say, and I know people who have been in marketing for a long time, it's a hard thing for them to adjust to digital because it's so different. If you send me an ad on this and I come to Goldsboro, you instantly know it. You know that your ad converted one person into Goldsboro. You know how long I was here, where I stayed, where I visited. You know all that stuff. If I drive by a billboard, you have no clue. None.
Well, and I understand though, your point is the relationship piece. So to better address that, would you like to shift money around to make sure that happens?
I just want to make sure it's something that when your team is thinking about the plan and the strategic plan, that it's not just thrown out because it's considered the old way it was done. Because even though you can't track it, it does drive people in. I mean, we've all gone outside of the walls of Wayne County and you see a billboard and you know a festival's coming and it's up your alley or it's something you tell somebody. So, I mean, it does generate.
Yeah. But,
and
I
again,
think,
it's that brand piece because I just want to make sure we're not too heavy online.
well, I think there's still the Totally Fly billboards that are up, that are the branding stuff. I mean,
The-
there's things
yeah.
locally that do
Sure.
that. But it's
Sure.
also a matter of, if you're going to, you say you drive by a billboard here and you know about an event in another city. Well, that's because they don't have a billboard in that city. If we put an event billboard in Goldsboro, people in Goldsboro are going to see it. If you put an event billboard in Raleigh for Freedom Fest, yeah, that's going to be great.
Yeah.
Because that's where you want to drag people from outside in. So in my mind, that doesn't benefit local. Lamar's not a local company, so they're not getting, they've got local people that work here, so yeah, you help the local rep, but it's, when you're doing destination marketing, it's not marketing in your destination. So that's the key thing to remember.
One of the big things you mentioned that I didn't realize was one of the big draws to the hotels is family coming to visit family. Well, if you advertise locally to the family about some event, you might get more people to come. So that's an aspect of looking at it. And then
Absolutely.
I'd-
That is a huge piece.
I'd be interested to know what we do on base. I know they have their own advertising, but how do we tie in to get that? Because having come from the military, I know most people, when they get a chance to leave the base, they leave the town. And we have to somehow touch them, whether it's the Paramount or anything else that we're doing.
So
To-
on those points, right? So two things. They do have their own marketing, and for the last 2 years, we have been investing in their marketing opportunities. We've not seen it work. We peeled back to say maybe if we stop advertising, we'll see a difference. There was no difference. So it was just sort of like it's not hitting the eyes of the people that it should. I don't know how else to explain it.
Do we pay for that on their billboards on base, on the electronic billboards or something, or?
Yeah, like their monitors and stuff. Yeah, like we had some ads in there. We have their Flashpoint ad. It just wasn't landing anywhere, and then we can't really even track it. Like I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
I mean,
I understand when we say that we want to advertise locally, but in the 3 years I've been here in Goldsboro, The first year when Melcor was my salesperson, we tried to do trade out or,
Yeah.
rooms right there. It didn't work. I mean,
Yeah,
it just, I gave a lot of dollars, it didn't work,
to the base is what he's saying, like you
Yeah.
did trade outs,
Yeah, trade outs right there. It just, I know we want the people to do it locally, but as a hotelier, I'm looking for those people who is coming from out to stay into my hotel so that we can keep functioning. If we want a hotel, the Maxwell Center, we're gonna need outside people to come into that hotel to make it. The local people are just not gonna spend the money, to do it.
And that's a good point, but, and just, gosh, I feel like I'm.
No. And-
keep beating
No, yeah, that's-
WRNS, I consider them local. Folks, they're not in Wayne County,
Right.
right? But they are in eastern North Carolina local. So like when the guitar pole's in town and they're spotting it all over and they're sending people to visit, that's,
Yeah.
so local, I should have.
Well, the one thing I'll point out, like, this was the key reason we created this, for local events to be able to advertise their
Sure,
events and us help them
sure.
out. And so there's creative ways. The one thing I don't want to do is I don't want Josie, or I don't want to say I don't want, I don't think Josie should be a marketing person for local events. We should be looking at ways to amplify local events messages. It's Freedom's Fest's job to come up with an advertising campaign. It's our job to help amplify that message. And that's it. So that's where things like this help out. Here's $1,000 to go do your thing. The partnership program. Hey, you can now get 3 times the ad buy for a third of your money. But you got to create an ad. If you create a terrible marketing campaign, it doesn't work, that's on you. So, and I think that's the big
The small
thing.
businesses or the small people or the mom and pops that don't have the wherewithal or the reach to be able to create.
Right. I mean, it's,
So, they still lose out.
yes. I mean, but.
It is on them, but it's not on them because they just don't have that technology or knowledge.
As a business owner, I get that, but it's your job to advertise your business. It's no one else's job. You should be the
I
biggest
think
spokesperson.
DDDC helps, or DDD, but Downtown Development Department helps in that regard a little bit with the smaller businesses
They
downtown.
do, yeah. But to a small degree, like I don't go to, especially right now, I can't go to Scott and be like, hey, create me an advertising campaign. No, but they help amplify my message. If I put something out
There would be no way
there.
to share Josie's capabilities fairly to everybody. So
No. So it's a matter of her job is to put marketing towards getting visitors into Goldsboro, and then let's find opportunities to amplify local messages with local
And
media.
I think it's going to come in waves, right? I think this master plan is really going to help us craft that strategic vision and focus points. And with the research we have, that's where I just wanted to be. I wanted to use this plan. And if we continue to be like, well, we've always advertised with so-and-so and so-and-so and so-so, and I don't want to like hurt their feelings. We have a lot of phone calls we're going to have to make in July. They're gonna be like, I'm really sorry we're not advertising you. I'm really sorry we're not advertising you. Not never again, but just not right now. And it's not just local. It's a lot of the partners that we've worked with over the years for advertising. And if we're going to make a change, I thought now is the time more than ever to figure out how we're going to reach people who aren't buying magazines as much, aren't picking up the magazines as much, aren't driving as much, aren't in their car as much, but you know what they are on? Their phones and their tablets and their computers. And I thought, this is where it makes sense. It makes so much sense to be very focused. And not to say we're blind to everybody else, but I just wanted to really have integrity with the plan and to use it to say, there's a lot of thought that went into it and a lot of research. For the first time ever, we have a plan that's research-based. And so I wanted, and that would be the reasoning with all of our people we're not advertising with at the current moment, to be like, I'm sorry, moving forward, we just can't. A, dollars, B, research. And so, yeah, but we have a meeting with WGBR next week, and it's not that we won't ever, it's just where does it make sense? Is it Quidditch? Is it, hey, are you guys gonna get a good deal? Can you give us a good deal? If other people wanna advertise with us, great, you're gonna go into that $9,000 category. Right, because there is value, I know what you're saying, it's just.
Yeah, and like Quidditch, that should be all online, that's a younger demographic, but like Freedom Fest, that would be a good opportunity to look at some local radio.
But we're not paying for that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want, and I guess that's where I'm
that-
like,
I
that's
guess
on that
maybe it's more
nonprofit.
broad stroking of, hey, make sure you follow us online so we can drive people to that. I don't know. We could talk about this for another 3 hours and.
Well, and
think
the
back
other
and
thing
forth
that I will
and-
point out is, I always harp that everything we should do should create occupancy dollars. But every time someone stays in a hotel, we're putting sales tax
Oh,
money in the general fund. So it's a
absolutely.
huge,
Yeah,
it benefits the city general fund, it benefits
It
our.
benefits everybody. It benefits our restaurants.
And the one
People
thing
are
I
filling
will
up their
say
gas.
is, every action that they do on social media doesn't have to be paid. And they have a huge following, they have a huge email list
Oh,
with a
yeah.
calendar that goes out to
Sure.
all local people that talk about local events that are going on. They post about stuff. So, all our local followers that are on that social media are seeing these things. So we can advertise those things. And the beauty about social media is $1 on social media,
Sure.
you'd have to spend $100 on traditional to get the same amplification.
Yeah.
So we could put, $50
Yeah.
into a local event that's barely going to touch the budget or be, out of that unprogrammed stuff and not impact the budget hugely, but still have a great reach for some local stuff versus if we go to the radio station and say, hey, we want to advertise for local event at the Paramount, it's $1,000 to walk in the door to get any kind of reach on the radio station. Versus online, we could put $10 towards it a week ahead of the event and probably drive 100 more people to them. So it's also being smart about how you're using that dollar. And, as a business owner that can't do online advertising because we promote the sale and use of tobacco, and I have only been able to use traditional stuff, I'd kill to be able to have the reach that I could get digitally. And I've done traditional stuff for 3 years. And it hasn't worked for me. It hasn't. I spent $4,800 on 2 billboards this year, and I probably got 15 people off of it. It's not a return on my investment. So it's the beauty, especially with digital, the beauty is that when someone comes to us, when Edward comes to us and says, how are you spending the dollars that I'm generating for you? We can literally go in and pull out data to say, we spent $6,000, we generated 10,000 room nights last year or whatever it was, and here's the data to back it up, versus I spent $7,000 on some billboards and I hope people came in and stayed in your hotel. But like Ashlyn says, the only way you can really tell if it's working is you stop doing it and see if you see a dip. And they haven't. So, and like, it's research-based, it's driven, we're tight on money, our budget's down this year, so.
but to your point, I'll go with Josie, and I have to get with Allison and see what is feasible for that partner program, that co-op, because I think that's where it'll speak to that local population and local advertising channels. Because yes, local brand awareness and good feels is very important still, because if we have visitors coming in and the locals are like, there's nothing to do here, that's not good.
Yeah, that's what their survey said, locals like, nothing doing Goldsboro.
Well, and I think, the FAM tours started, 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
2.
That's a game changer because, that partnership to get hoteliers out into the community and see it. We're seeing what's going on in the community. We're seeing the good stuff and the people and the partnerships and the opportunities and all that. So I think the more of that is good, and there's so much good going on. So I did not mean to derail. But I do have one more
Cheesecake,
question
no.
about the History Channel. And I never want to make an assumption, so don't throw anything at me. But do the downtown businesses, are there certain ones they're going to visit? Or has the downtown community been made aware, hey, they're coming? We know y'all always do a good job, but if I were a business owner, I would love a heads up that a national.
I have beat the drum as much as I could for
Okay,
them.
okay.
So
Is there
obviously,
something the chamber can do to help promote it as well?
both the Merchants Association and DGDC have made businesses aware.
Okay.
That
But yeah, well-
since this opportunity started and there was
But
discussions
do they,
about
I
it.
just want to know, I know it was in the paper
No,
and heard about the radio, but that's tomorrow.
I've sent an email and
Cool.
spoken with businesses, and we know
Perfect.
Scott has done the same thing.
Perfect. I want everybody to,
Just, hey,
Don't
heads
wanna
up,
assume.
make your store look good, put some displays on the outside, like, do things, you might be on B-roll footage and,
right.
Yeah.
They haven't said what businesses they're targeting downtown, or are they, is it?
I don't know that they're targeting specific
It's,
businesses.
there's,
Bicycle World probably.
they're doing a lot of B-roll of storefronts,
Yeah.
but there's only one location that they're gonna be inside, and that'll be Brewworks.
Unless I put a car show at my hotel before they come.
You got 48
Yes.
I can do it now.
Yeah.
All Dodge Chargers.
Well, just for the sake of time, if you guys have any more thoughts, especially after I email the plan out, this presentation out, feel free to let me know. But just so we can wrap things up, for additional projects on item M on the agenda, there's a list of things that we've been working on during our COVID era, is the EDA grants, CARES Act, put in another $1.5 billion into EDA projects. They can be construction or technical assistance projects. So we've been working with planning, Scott. I even think that Mark Pope is aware. He's been in contact with Hillary Sherman at the EDA office in Atlanta. So there's a lot of movement on ideas and concepts. We're just trying to iron out the feasibility of putting some of these projects to life. It's, there's just a lot, and there's going to be a lot of competitive applications that the EDA office receives for the CARES Act funding, and some of these projects that we are wanting to propose don't have to be part of the CARES Act. They can be anytime. When the CARES Act money runs out, we can still apply. The difference is that it's an 80-20 split, 80% funding from the EDA, 20% funding on local government. And then normal years is 50-50. So there's a lot more piece of the pie that'd be covered under some of these projects that could possibly be helpful to our market. Our state grant, I applied to have them match what we wanted to spend with them next year. So it sounds like we're going to get another $6,000 out of buy. That could be another potential to offer it up to our local people here to get the word out a little bit more widespread about their businesses. We have U.S. Quidditch that we are awarded with from last year till this year, but Major League Quidditch is another competitive league, and I've put in a bid to host their championship for 2021. I should know if we're in the final list and probably eligible for a site visit maybe in August. USA Championships are usually scheduled the Columbus Day weekend in October. Unfortunately, they've been canceled. That is just due to lack of time to get players back out on the courts to even get to a point where they could compete at a championship level. And now that Novak Djokovic has got COVID, that puts a damper on things for the US Open. I'm pretty upset about that. All right, so other than that, in your packet, you have our May report and the member listing. That is the longest meeting we've ever had. Anyone have anything else to say?
Actually, I do want to say something, just kind of update on hotel at the Maxwell Center. We are working with a developer now. Hopefully, we'll have an agreement ready to be approved by our July 7th or 8th meeting. So we have an agreement in principle now. It is now being worked on with their attorneys and our attorneys. The framework is done, but we're really, really excited. We think it's a good fit for the location. I want to thank Ashland as well. Ashland has been in some of our meetings with the hotelier as well. But it is really, really good news and a good opportunity for us.
Could you tell us what brand it is?
Nope, cannot.
Can't say a word.
Nope, cannot.
I'm just saying this thing we can go.
You'll find out in July.
I understand that right there, but what I'm trying to say and everything is that the reason. Okay.
It is what
It's
we've
select.
asked
It's a hotel.
for, is what we've asked
wanna-
for. It's not a full-service restaurant. We've asked for a bistro, we've asked for meeting rooms.
bar.
We have asked for,
There's a bar
110
inside.
rooms. We've asked for, we want a good medium-price hotel.
So then it can only be, it can only be a couple hotels, either a Courtyard or a Hyatt or something like that, who have a bistro and everything. I've been in a hotel for 20 years, degree from North Carolina Central. So, I know hotels, so.
The agreement that we're working on is that once we have the agreement with the group, they have to get it branded. So they'll take our agreement and then work on the branding from there. So,
Just to be honest with you and everything, just not trying to be a damper in nobody's parade. If it's a Hilton property, I'm being so honest, I'm gonna fight that. I'm gonna fight a Hilton property. No, you're being honest. See, one thing you don't know about agreements, Hilton would tell us, well, we got a Hilton application coming in, do you approve right there? We get the first dibs on trying to, get that, just let you know.
Well, Edward, we hope, here's where we
Hilton
stand,
property
right?
would
Like,
kill me. You know this, Barack,
look,
a Hilton property would kill me.
Here's where we're at, though, and I hope you, as a board member, you can see it like this, too. The Maxwell Center is a huge investment of occupancy tax to put heads in beds, right, in our market. Without a hotel, we're having a hard time getting the events that put heads in beds, because that is a deal breaker on any RFP that we can bid on. If we get, say, these meetings now, when a hotel is built, they're never going to give all 110 rooms out to the room block. They're going to have overflow. And guess, even if it is a Hilton or a Marriott, guess who's going to be also on the contracted hotel list? The other Hiltons and the other Marriotts. So it's not going to be,
Well, and the other argument.
It's just gonna be more room nights.
That I have is, we have had this RFP out for 3 to 4 years
Yeah.
that we have been looking. So it's not a secret that we have been trying and talking about bringing a hotel to the site, and we have given everybody the opportunity.
I've
to
talked with
call.
Mark and Todd.
Yeah.
Oh, I've talked with them, and they said no.
I talked
So,
to Todd about that about 6 months ago and everything.
And he
I
said
know
no.
why. I know why he said no. We had him and I we had a conversation about that right now.
I know, but there's other people saying yes.
We did start locally first before we
Yeah.
started reaching out, so.
Well, I'm happy. If it's anything but Hilton, I'll support it.
This is the one thing I'll say, Edward. These events, we're not getting anyway without this hotel. So it's not like events that were being booked there are now going to stop staying with you. We're talking about brand new events that are going to be in there that we're bypassing.
No,
us
I mean,
regardless.
I'm just playing. I'm gonna be a team player. I really am. I'm happy for it because it needs to be a hotel there.
I promise you, the occupancy tax dollars we get from them, we'll use to advertise all of Goldsboro, so you'll get some more business in there. I'm sorry.
I have a lawyer in your contract.
All right, well,
I think that's it. We're meeting adjourned.
okay.
Thank you guys for staying.